This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. These are the MMA Minutes. I am your host, Sean Anderson, and alongside me, as always, is Danny Gutierrez.
What's going on, Sean? How are you?
Our fighting expert. I'm
fighting
good.
expert. I try. I do my best. I try.
I am good. I am on a 4-fight card winning streak.
Listen. Let's not rub it in.
What?
Let's not rub it in.
I'm just
right
saying,
now.
I'm on a 4-fight card winning streak, and I'm gonna make it 5 here, and I'm going to take a huge lead in our pick'ems. And we have the granddaddy of them all. We thought the granddaddy of them all was in July when UFC 200 happened, but now we have UFC 205. We're previewing this card, the first fight card that's going to be happening in Madison Square Garden for the UFC.
It's about time.
First fight card to be happening in New York in about 13 years, something crazy.
It's been a very
UFC.
long time. It's been well over 10 years.
Been a long time coming, and we are glad that it's back. I'm super excited for it. I know Danny's super excited for it.
Oh, I'm ecstatic. I can't wait for this fight. This is such a crazy card. I can't wait. This is just stacked from top to bottom.
It is completely stacked top to bottom, and that's why we're doing a special edition where we're talking about every single fight here, and we're going to pick every single fight. And we're going to start off here with the UFC Fight Pass prelims here. First fight, we got Liz Carmouche, the USA vet, I believe.
Yeah, she is. She's a former Marine.
She's a former Marine taking on Chookagian, and we took about 5 minutes trying to pronounce her name because
right.
we know Jedrzejczyk and we can pronounce that one because she's been in our mind. But
and Karolina Kowalkiewicz.
Yeah, and I believe Chookagian, this is her second fight in the UFC. But looking at this fight, do you like the former Marine in Carmouche who almost beat Ronda Rousey back at UFC 151, I believe, or do you like the new and up-and-comer in Chookagian?
I really do like the new up-and-comer in Caitlin Chookagian. She is undefeated. She's riding that mean streak, and she's a CFFC flyweight champion, not bantamweight champion, flyweight champion. Flyweight. She's going up in weight, and if she can carry the weight very well, I believe that she could overtake Liz Carmouche because Liz Carmouche is a very good fighter. She likes to come forward a lot. She's a very powerful grappler as well. But I think Caitlin's going to stay undefeated. I think she's going to use her strikes to stay on the outside. And if they get into the clinch, I've seen her fight on the ground, and she's not necessarily a picnic there either. So she's very deadly everywhere she goes. She's extremely well-rounded. I'm picking Caitlin.
Yeah, I want to pick Carmouche just because of her history. I mean, she's fought so many tough people.
She's been around for a very long time.
And she has a win over Jessica Andrade. She has a win over... she fought Miesha Tate. She's fought Alexis Davis. She's obviously fought Ronda Rousey. So, I mean, I want to pick her because she has that veteran experience. But also, she hasn't fought since April 4 of 2015. And when she did last fight, she fought Lauren Murphy. And Caitlin Chookagian's first one in the UFC was against Lauren Murphy, but that was back in July. So, the one thing is the rust might be a problem for Carmouche.
The ring rust. The timing of it all.
So I think it's going to be tough to go away from a person who is up and coming, who has fresh legs going up against Carmouche, who is the older fighter. So I'm also going to be taking Caitlin Chookagian here as well. I think that it's going to be a decision. It might get the MSG crowd a little. I don't want to say it's going to be a boring fight, but I think it's going to be slow.
Caitlin's wild.
I think it's going to be a slow grinder. Yeah,
Caitlin's a wild striker. She'll throw a lot of crazy stuff. She'll throw a lot of spinning wheel kicks and spinning back fists.
And Carmouche does have powerful hands, but I think that it's going to be more of a grinding fight. But let's move on now to the other fight taking place on the UFC Fight Pass early prelims. We have Jim Miller taking on Thiago Alves, and this one's going to be a catchweight. This is supposed to be the
debut of Thiago Alves at lightweight, and unfortunately, he didn't make it.
Yeah,
weighing in at 162 this morning. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, so it's going to be a catchweight. Jim Miller did accept the fight, so he will be getting some purse on him.
Good on him.
Jim Miller's a vet. Jim Miller knows how to do it.
He's such a monster. He's so tough.
He's coming off a win over Joe Lozon. Some people saying he didn't win, but still, great fight.
That was a very close fight.
Yeah, and those two obviously put on a show when they first fought.
The fight of the night, as well. Both times, in both outings.
So now we will look at Thiago Alves making his kind of lightweight debut, even though it's going to be a catchweight, and he will be taking on Jim Miller. Who do you like? Do you like Jim Miller or do you like Thiago Alves?
I'm going to pick Jim Miller on this one. He's been acclimated to 155 for a while. He's not going to be drained. He's got that wrestling. He's got very good boxing skills. He's got very heavy hands when he puts those combinations together. Thiago Alves is a very good kickboxer as well. He likes to use 3 jabs, maybe 2 jabs, and then utilize that leg kick. He's got a powerful straight right and a lead left hook, and that's due to his Muay Thai prowess. That being said, when it comes to the ground, guys like John Fitch and the first fight with Papi Abedi, even though he won that fight, they were in his face, utilizing the clinch, utilizing the cage to suffocate him and take away that space, the attack of Thiago Alves. That's why I'm picking Jim Miller. I think he's just going to take him over for 3 rounds.
Really, I mean, since the GSP loss, he's been back and forth, win-loss, win-loss. And then when he came back in 2014, Thiago Alves, he had the 2 wins, and then he lost to Condit. And it's usually tough to pick these catchweight ones because Oliveira, last fight card, he did lose against Lamas, and Lamas did take the fight. But usually we do see the guys who...
He got choked out.
He did.
Lamas choked out Charles Oliveira.
I think I also called that. I think
yes,
I called
it was.
the second round choke.
It was one of those ones, yes.
But I think the fact that Alves is going to be wanting to put on a show because he did miss weight, and I think that his hands are just going to be too heavy. I think that he's still going to be in that range of 170 where he's still comfortable in weight. He's going to be a little, obviously a little lighter, but I still think that Thiago Alves is going to be able to put on a show. Even though I think Jim Miller is a fantastic fighter, I think Thiago Alves will get it, just because the weight difference actually might play a huge advantage here. So I'll take the Pitbull in this one. And let's move on now to the prelims.
I must interject. Weighing it at 162, that takes a lot out of your body when you're used to cutting down to 170. Yeah. The extra 8 pounds could take a lot out of his body. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. He looked fairly gaunt. He looked fairly gaunt when he was weighing in this morning. He looked kind of like Skeletor, not too much, not too bad, but if he were at 155, I wonder what he would have looked like. So I think the cardio for Jim Miller is just going to take over. Yeah,
and we do have a while now. I mean, since they do have the early weigh-ins that happen at 9 a.m., he does have a fairly decent amount of time to rehydrate and get back up to a weight that he's normal at training at and fighting at. But let's move on now to the prelims. We have a Chicago fighter. We got Belal Muhammad taking on Vincent.
Remember the name, Belal Muhammad.
Belal Muhammad taking on Vicente Luque. Who do you like in this fight and why?
I like Belal Muhammad. I think his power is going to get it done. I think his forward pressure is going to get it done. And Vicente Luque is a very dynamic striker as well as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. He's a brown belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's a purple belt in Luta Libre, which is basically Brazilian shoot wrestling, catch wrestling, submission wrestling. So Vicente Luque is very versatile off the ground. And that being said, I think Belal Muhammad is just going to use his power to get it done here.
Yeah, I mean, with Luque and Muhammad, I mean, these guys are pretty fresh to the UFC scene.
They are.
They have had
similar records too.
Yeah, they've had I think a couple fights, both of them, under their record in the UFC. So I haven't seen enough to be like, all right, these guys are up and coming, but I haven't seen enough to say I don't know if these guys are going to be future UFC fighters. But I think that really I have to go with the Chicagoan just because he is more of a Chicagoan, and because I don't know enough stylistic wise if Muhammad will really be able to, because he puts on a lot of pressure.
He does.
He averages about like five strikes a minute. He does significant strikes per minute, so he does put on a lot of pressure here, and I just think that if Luque does want to take it to the ground, though, he might be able to against Muhammad just because of the brown belt jiu-jitsu, the brown belt in jiu-jitsu he does have. So I think that it's going to be a contested fight. But ultimately, I think that I'll go Belal Muhammad, and I think he might be able to knock him out in the second round, and it might be more something where Luque does go for a takedown, and then he's able to catch him with an uppercut. But I'll take Belal Muhammad here. So we've agreed on 2 fights so far, and let's move on now. We got Rafael Natal taking on Tim Boetsch in a middleweight fight. Who do you like in this one? Do you like Boetsch the Barbarian, or do you like Natal?
I really like Rafael Natal because of the fact that he's got that high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and his striking is developing. When he fought Robert Whittaker, even though he lost, he was utilizing defensive angles very well, and he was blocking very well. He was also utilizing that jab leg kick very well, and it actually slowed down the attack of Robert Whittaker. And Tim Boetsch, even though he's got that win over the late Josh Salmon, rest in peace, I think that it's been too long for Tim Boetsch. I think he's taken a little bit too much punishment over his career. That's why I'm taking Rafael Natal. I think he's either going to submit him or knock him out.
Yeah, and before that win with Boetsch, he had a pretty long losing streak, losing to Dan Henderson. So I think Natal, he's up and coming, and Boetsch is more of that guy on the on the decline of his career, where he might possibly still stay with the UFC, but he might be on early prelim fights just because he does have that power.
And
to
Tim
knock him
Boetsch
out.
is powerful in the clinch too. He's got heavy hands. He's got very good wrestling, but sometimes that does get him into trouble because he did shoot a takedown on Luke Rockhold, the former UFC middleweight champion, and he got triangled and got in a whole bunch of trouble on the ground. He was threatened with a Kimura, and he was mounted with a inverted mounted triangle, so he was just in a lot of trouble because of that wrestling. So that's why I gave it to Natal. I think he's just more diverse in every facet of his attack.
Yeah, and there's something too with Natal where he is 33 years old and Boetsch is 35, but there's a difference in like MMA years where those 35 years of Boetsch, the 29 fights he's had in his career, he's taken a lot of damage, and I think Natal he's the fresher fighter, and I think that's going to be the big key.
Well,
here.
Natal has been knocked out by Tim Kennedy, who was supposed to fight on this card against Rashad Evans, but that's okay. We don't like to talk about that.
It's going to happen at UFC 206. They've rescheduled it.
Yes.
But yeah, I'll take Natal. Let's move on now. And a fighter that I've not been able to talk about.
Your favorite fighter
on the MMA minutes. My favorite fighter here. We got Khabib Nurmagomedov taking on Michael Johnson. And Danny, first tell us how Michael Johnson can win, and then I'll tell you why Khabib Nurmagomedov is going to stomp him.
Michael Johnson's got very heavy hands. He's very powerful. He's a knockout artist. He just knocked out Dustin Poirier. He likes to utilize his footwork and head movement, and working with the Black Zillions. He's working with Henry Hooft in that Dutch style of kickboxing. So that's been very complimenting to his striking game. It's actually amped up his striking game. It's taken it to a whole new level, and you see that time and time again. Khabib Nurmagomedov is just amazing, and I'll let you take over because.
Well, the thing with Khabib is, obviously he has the UFC record for most takedowns in a fight with 22, and Khabib he doesn't look strong. If you look at his legs, he's got chicken legs. But the fact that he has just got so much power and the way that he wrestles with a Sambo background, it's just something of just pure imagination watching him, because it's just if he wants it to go to the ground, it will go to the ground. The one thing though is he's never fought a striker like Michael Johnson,
as deadly as Michael Johnson.
Yeah, and people will bring up that he fought RDA, but that wasn't the same RDA that was the lightweight champion.
That was an RDA who was trying to stay off of the ground rather than get off on his own attack.
Yeah, and I know that was his last pretty much big win was RDA. He did have the win over Darrell Horcher back in April, but Darrell Horcher was a guy that filled in for Tony Ferguson.
The newcomer.
Here. So I think that ultimately, Khabib does have a fantastic shot if it goes to the ground here, but I think that it's going to be a great fight because Michael Johnson does pose so many...
This is going to be a great fight. It's going to be a very explosive fight.
Yeah, Michael Johnson does pose so many threats standing up, and obviously we saw that in the Nate fight that Michael Johnson had, you really need to beat Michael Johnson with pressure. And if you let him stay back and get comfortable in the pocket, that's what's going to be dangerous. So I think that Khabib pressuring him with takedowns is going to be the key here. So if Michael Johnson can defend the takedown, which he obviously can because he has an 81% takedown defense in his career, I think that's the way that Michael Johnson will win. But I'm going to take Khabib. I think Khabib will wear him down in a 3-round decision. And I would not be surprised if he called out Eddie Alvarez or Conor McGregor after that fight, because Tony Ferguson, while Tony Ferguson did look really impressive against RDA last week,
yes, he did.
He did not
looked very dominant.
He did not call anyone out, and we've really seen if you really call someone out and really put yourself out there, that's how you get a title shot. And I think Khabib might be able to cement him into that title shot decision fully if he does call out one of the champions, whoever does win.
Arguably, 4 of the best lightweights in the world are fighting on this card with Khabib, with Michael Johnson, and the 2 gentlemen who we're going to be talking about later, but we'll save that for later.
We'll see how McGregor does at lightweight in the UFC. But yeah, we'll move on. I'm picking Nurmagomedov. Who are you picking? I'm going to pick Khabib as well. Michael Johnson, you're going to see him try to utilize the center of the octagon. He's not going to want to be against the cage. He's going to want to use his footwork and stay at the center of the octagon and utilize that boxing, utilize those uppercuts and those knees, because Khabib is going to be shooting for that takedown, and he's going to be wrestling for that takedown. So I could see Michael Johnson utilizing an uppercut and a knee. You're going to be seeing a lot of that, but I think Khabib's just going to set up his takedowns with his striking. And he's just going to put him up against the cage and suffocate him, take him down and beat him up. And I think Khabib is
gonna stay undefeated. I think he's gonna be 24-0.
I always do. You're smart. Anyways, let's move on to the final fight on the prelims. We have the featherweight fight between Frankie Edgar and Jeremy Stephens.
He's Frankie Edgar.
3 of my top favorite fighters are on this card.
I love Frankie Edgar.
You got Khabib.
He's got the biggest heart in UFC, the hardest chin, never been knocked out,
and one of the nicest guys.
Yes,
and one of the
absolutely.
nicest guys.
Former UFC lightweight champion,
and just came off a loss to Jose Aldo in a great fight at UFC 200. But yeah, 3 of my favorite fighters: Khabib, Frankie, and Conor McGregor. Your favorite fighter, and Frankie Edgar. So what can Frankie do against Jeremy Stephens to get the win?
He utilizes speed and straight punches, and of course utilize that vintage wrestling. As soon as Jeremy Stephens loads up on an overhand right, shoot for that takedown. As soon as Jeremy Stephens picks up the leg for a kick or a knee or anything of the sort, shoot in for that leg and go for the takedown. He's off balance. If his back is against the cage, Frankie's going to use that boxing and those kicks from the outside, and then shoot in on an awkward angle and eventually get that single leg takedown. He's got a very high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game, working with Ricardo Almeida at Renzo Gracie in New Jersey. Excuse me, I had a brain fart there.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to get it done against Jeremy Stephens, and I think as soon as this fight happens, as soon as the bell rings, Jeremy Stephens is just going to come out hands blazing. Just he's got very heavy hands. He's got monstrous striking. It's going to be a very interesting fight to watch, but I think Frankie's going to take it.
And we all know the way to victory for Jeremy Stephens. It's his punching power.
It's the knockout.
Yeah, it's his punching power.
He's a knockout artist. He prides himself on that.
Yeah, and we've seen that consistently throughout his career. And I think the one thing, though, with Frankie is that we've seen that he has a fantastic chin all throughout his career. And the one thing about the Aldo fight that he was able to do was that he was able to put a lot of pressure on Jose Aldo. And the one thing that Jose Aldo really won the fight on
was the counters.
Was the counters and the significant strikes that he landed. So
yes.
If Jeremy Stephens does go with the Jose Aldo approach, which is very difficult to do because Jose Aldo is one of the best featherweights of all time, but if he does go with the Jose Aldo approach of more counter punching and using those heavy hands, I think that's the way he can win. But ultimately, I think Frankie is going to use that pressure, and I think that's going to be too much for Jeremy Stephens, where he won't be able to counter. He won't be able to have that quick reaction. I think Frankie will be able to pressure him enough and squeak out a decision here.
I think Frankie's going to be a ghost in there against Jeremy Stephens. Not to say that Jeremy Stephens can't win. I think Frankie's just going to be too fast, too quick. He's going to be in and out. He's going to utilize those angles in that boxing, working with Mark Henry. I think he's just going to take over Jeremy Stephens.
And plus, he's going to be working. He's pretty much has the mindset of a champion too, since he's been working with Eddie Alvarez this whole fight camp, since they both are from Mark Henry's camp. And it's weird. We've been agreeing a lot, but let's move on now to the main card.
It's high stakes right now, man.
It is. we are now moving to the main card here, where we have former bantamweight women's champion Miesha Tate taking on Raquel Pennington, and Miesha Tate was actually the coach of Raquel Pennington on The Ultimate Fighter when Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey squared off. So in this, do you like Tate to bounce back after a loss from Nunes? She didn't have problem weight cutting this time, which is obviously a bit huge for her because she had a very difficult time weight cutting for the Nunes fight. Or do you have Raquel Pennington?
I have Tate winning this fight. I think she's going to get it done with her wrestling. I think she's just going to suffocate Raquel Pennington. Raquel Pennington's actually she's a very good counter striker as well. She's got very good striking defense. She's pretty decent on the ground, defensively speaking. But I think Miesha Tate's just going to outclass her with her wrestling.
Yeah, it's difficult to go against Tate just because she is one of the most resilient fighters we've seen in the UFC, and she's one of the hardest people to beat. And the way that Amanda Nunes beat her at UFC 200 was one of the most shocking things that I've seen because, I mean...
Very dominant. Really, very explosive.
Ronda wasn't able to do that to Miesha Tate. I mean, Miesha Tate was one of the ones that actually was able to take
Ronda to the third
round. So it's difficult to say. I mean, outside of the fight they had in Strikeforce, but at least in the UFC, I think that Miesha is just too resilient to really lose this fight again. I mean, we haven't seen her lose.
Her confidence should be at max right now.
Yeah, we haven't seen her lose 2 straight since she lost to Kat Zingano and then lost to Ronda. So I don't think she's going to lose 2 straight here. I think that Miesha Tate's resiliency is going to be huge here because Raquel Pennington, I think that they're very similar very similar fighting styles. But Miesha Tate is obviously a world class fighter here, and I think Raquel Pennington's
former Strikeforce
trying to get up there
and UFC women's bantamweight champion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Miesha Tate's going to be too good to beat on Saturday, and we're supposed to be talking about Kelvin Gastelum and Donald Cerrone.
But unfortunately, it's not happening, so let's move on.
But Kelvin Gastelum did miss weight here, so Donald Cerrone has actually now been rescheduled to fight at UFC 206 against Matt Brown, so we will see Cowboy soon, and it would be weird not seeing Cowboy. I mean, obviously Cowboy, the consummate professional, always being able to make weight and always showing up. So.
Yes, but I would imagine that Kelvin Gastelum, he is going to get in trouble over this one because this isn't the first time that he has missed weight, especially on the day of weigh-ins.
Yeah.
It would be unfortunate to see another Ultimate Fighter winner go due to this, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got cut after this fight.
Yeah, and I don't think he's ever going to go up to 185. I don't think he's ever going to make the jump up to middleweight because I think he's too small.
I think he's too small as well.
Yeah, so I mean, it might be a situation where he might have to. I mean, his last fight against Johnny Hendricks, obviously both of those fighters have trouble making weight consistently. So I mean, maybe he needs to go.
Gastelum made the weight and Hendricks did not.
Yeah,
that outing.
But maybe you have to go with Mike Dolce, who's never missed a weight cut.
Right.
His fighters never missed a weight cut. But Gastelum definitely needs to change something, or I don't think his time in the UFC will be lasting longer. Anyways, let's move to guys that did make weight. We have a middleweight fight here between Yoel Romero, who has not lost in the UFC, and we have Chris Weidman, who is the former middleweight champion who knocked out Anderson Silva and is coming off a loss against Luke Rockhold. Who do you like in this fight?
I really like Yoel Romero. I think his striking's going to get it done. I think his power's going to get it done. He does tend to tire out over the course of a very long fight. However, this is a 3-round fight, and Chris Weidman would be smart to utilize his cardio and his chin in a 5-round fight. This is not a 5-round fight. This is a 3-round middleweight fight. I'm picking Yoel Romero because he's got that power.
Yeah, I'm going to go against you here. Mark Munoz, Damian Maia, Anderson Silva twice, Lyoto Machado, Vitor Belfort. These are all guys that Chris
Weidman's got
beat.
a very impressive record.
He does, and Chris Weidman's a very impressive fighter. I'm not taking away from Yoel Romero here, but I think that Chris Weidman is going to be so motivated by this MSG crowd because he is a New York-born fighter, the only New York-born fighter in this card. He's one of the guys that fought to get the UFC in New York, legalized in New York, or at least MMA legalized in New York, and to have UFC put on this event in New York. I think that's going to be a huge motivation factor for Chris Weidman. I think Chris Weidman's going to win this one, and I think we're going to see him call out Michael Bisping, and we're going to have Bisping versus Weidman for that middleweight belt, because Weidman's pretty much calling out Bisping, saying, who have you beaten? I've beaten these guys to get my belt, and you beat Dan Henderson, and you stepped in and beat Rockhold, where Rockhold wasn't even taking the fight serious. So I think Weidman's going to be motivated.
That was Rockhold's fault.
That was Rockhold's
and that
fault.
was Rockhold's fault. That wasn't Chris Weidman's fault. That wasn't Michael Bisping's fault. That was Rockhold's fault.
Yeah, but I'll take Weidman here. We're differing there, and I wouldn't be surprised if Romero won, but I think Chris Weidman's going to put the pressure on him, and I think that's how Chris Weidman is going to win. And let's move on to the first of 3 title fights here.
Yes.
We have Joanna Jedrzejczyk taking on Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Who do you like in this fight? Does the strawweight champion Joanna retain, or does the fellow the fellow Polish fighter get the win?
I love both of these girls because they come to fight. Joanna Jedrzejczyk is a very dynamic striker. She's a blood and guts fighter. She loves just making her opponents suffer. Mm-hmm. She loves getting in their faces. She loves just overwhelming them with strikes at very different angles, very odd angles as well. And she's a high volume striker too. She does not stop striking. She does not stop coming forward.
She's a machine.
Yes. If you take her down, she will get back up and start striking again. If you get in the clinch with her, she's going to look to pummel and get to a dominant position in the Muay Thai clinch and start raining elbows and knees. She's always attacking. She's always looking for the attack. She's always looking for the finish. Karolina Kowalkiewicz is the same way. She's the same fighter. However, I feel like she's a little bit less versatile in her attack. I don't see a lot of punches from Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I think Joanna Jedrzejczyk's going to get it win because of her diversity in there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing.
This is a very tough fight. Mm-hmm. I can guarantee you that this is going to be a bloody fight. And I would not be surprised if this fight went all 5 rounds in one fight of the night, because both girls are extremely tough. Both girls are undefeated. Both girls got really heated and in their faces at the press conference as well. So there's high emotions in this fight, and they're both Polish representatives, so I cannot wait for this fight.
I fully agree with you. I think this is definitely going to be fight of the night here. I think this is fully going to be the fight of the night here, just because look at UFC 189. What was the fight that was being covered? Chad Mendes versus Conor McGregor. What was that co-main event?
Joanna Jedrzejczyk.
No. Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald.
That's right. I'm sorry.
One of the best fights.
How dare I? I'm so sorry.
One of the best fights in UFC history.
Yes, it was.
And I think that Alvarez and McGregor are overshining these other 2 title fights, and I think Joanna Jedrzejczyk and Karolina Kowalkiewicz are going to come up and bang this one out. And I think I agree with you with that Joanna's going to get the win here, and I think it's really going to be that machine that we saw in that Claudia Gadelha fight, where Claudia won the first 2 rounds, but then Joanna did not slow down at all and just picked up the pace and just wore her down. And I think that Joanna's attrition is going to be the way that she wins this fight. If Karolina can somehow catch her in the first 2 rounds and put her down, that's the only way I see that Karolina Kowalkiewicz wins this one.
You talk about Joanna's forward pressure. Karolina would be able to use that to angle out and utilize her counters, because that's something that she is very good at. That's where her high percentage of strikes comes from. Another X factor to factor in, if you will. Joanna Jedrzejczyk is training at American Top Team, and and everybody is saying that this is the greatest thing. That this is a very big step for Joanna Jedrzejczyk. It's a very good thing. I would kind of feel that this is a double-edged sword because of the fact that, yes, she's training with high-level guys like Mike Brown, and she's getting a lot of new advice. However, when you're in your corner in the middle of the fight and you're with a corner who hasn't been with you for so many fights, it's kind of frustrating. It gets kind of annoying. It's a struggle. So it's another X factor to factor in, I believe. I feel that Karolina, she has her own coaches since day one, pretty much. She's got her original camp from Poland here in MSG. So this is going to be very interesting. It's very interesting strategies playing out here. So we'll see. We'll see what Joanna shows up. But I think she's going to retain her title.
And we have to mention early on in their careers that Joanna does have a win over Karolina in their amateur fighting career. Joanna did choke her out. I think it was in round 1 back in their amateur career. So Joanna does have a win over Karolina, and I think that I agree with you that might be a huge difference here, and that the first 2 rounds are very open for anyone to win, because Karolina might be able to really get Joanna off balance, and then the coaches will not be able to help Joanna. But I think that Joanna's just such a smart fighter in general that she won't really need to rely on her coaches that much.
Right.
I think they'll be able to assess and really tell her what to change after rounds, but I think during the fight, I think she has such a high IQ.
Not to say that her move from America American Top Team, excuse me.
She went to one of the best camps. Yeah,
right.
She went to one of the best camps, but still, it's people have said that it takes 2 or 3 fights to really get used to your new camp.
And your coaches, and the different voices around. So
I think it's going to be definitely an interesting fight. This is my pick for fight of the night. I know it's Danny's pick of fight of the night. We're both taking Joanna Jedrzejczyk to retain, but I think Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Joanna are going to put on a show that MSG is not expecting. But let's move on now to the co-main event, the welterweight title fight between Tyron Woodley and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Who do you like in this fight and why?
You know what? Style-wise, I like Thompson, but personally, Tyron Woodley's not getting any love. He's the underdog and he's the champion. He was in the open workouts, and he was showing off in front of the crowd, and he went up to the microphone to the crowd, and he kept asking the crowd, "Who's got my back?" And the crowd chanted, "Wonder Boy."
Yeah.
And he asked again, "Who's got my back?" The crowd chanted again, "Wonder Boy." He just turned around and said, "And still," and walked off. So he's not getting any love from anybody, but you're getting love from me, Tyron Woodley. If you're listening to this, you're getting some love from me. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's a very dynamic striker, no doubt about it. He can do it all standing up, and he's ever improving on his wrestling and his grappling because of the fact that he's training with former UFC middleweight champion Chris Weidman, who's a huge middleweight. We didn't discuss that. Romero is short and stocky, but Chris Weidman, when he's not cutting weights, is ginormous middleweight. It's a big middleweight. That's a big guy to keep pushing off of you when you're trying to get off on kicks and strikes at awkward angles, just like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's been doing since he was a baby. 57-0 in kickboxing. It's amazing. It's amazing what he can do at this level. Tyron Woodley's got that powerful wrestling. He's very powerful with his hands as well. He knocked out the unknockoutable Robbie Lawler.
Yep.
Excuse me, in the first round, and just took over Robbie Lawler with one punch, changed the course of the welterweight division, and just now he's the king. Now he's the man. If Tyron Woodley wants to be successful in this fight, he's got to utilize that in-your-face wrestling style. He's got to use his explosivity in this fight, throughout this fight, to get it done against someone like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, because someone like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson needs to utilize that distance to get off on those strikes, get off on those kicks and those straight punches. Tyron Woodley needs to stay in Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's face. He's got to utilize that wrestling, utilize that boxing, stay in close, suffocate Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's muscles with those knees and elbows. But this is a 5-round fight. We talked about this 5-round fight. I feel like all those muscles are going to burn out in the later rounds if he doesn't pace himself correctly.
Or doesn't knock him out early. Yeah.
Right. That being said, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson can finish it whenever he wants to, however he wants to, standing up. That's why I'm picking Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
The thing is that Stephen Thompson is coming off of a win against Rory McDonald, and the way that he did that was spacing. Rory did have the right game plan to beat Stephen Wonderboy Thompson,
yes,
but he wasn't able to capitalize at all, and he wasn't able to take him down because of the spacing that Stephen Wonderboy.
And he tried, but he was too far away from the shot, and he was trying to utilize this ankle pick or ankle leg lock. Leg lock.
And he did a rolling one as well.
Yeah.
And the thing is
that's a Marcin Held type move where he rolls into the leg lock and takes you down. He tried to do that against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing is he creates so much weird space and weird angles where he's still in range, but he's completely out of your range. And the thing with Woodley is that it's been a problem his whole career was actual stamina, and we saw that in the actual fight that he had against Rory McDonald. And I think that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is going to put too many disadvantages to Woodley. I think Woodley definitely has the more power to knock him out. I think that counter-wise and boxing-wise,
Tyron Woodley's a physical specimen. He's a monster.
He's a linebacker.
Yes,
he's a linebacker. And I think Woodley definitely has the power to knock him out. But I just think that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson isn't going to give him that angle to do it, and he won't give him that that shot that Robbie Lawler gave.
What's interesting about this,
Tyron Woodley?
Excuse me. What's interesting about this fight too is that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson can switch stances and fight both orthodox and southpaw. Tyron Woodley can too, but that's usually for his wrestling. Because when wrestlers like to shoot, they usually put their dominant hand in front, so their lead foot is in front, and they shoot off their lead leg, their most powerful leg, their dominant leg, to get in deep on a double leg takedown. And that's something that Tyron Woodley's known for. He's the type of explosive wrestler who could just be at one side of the octagon and then shoot in for a takedown and have you up against the cage and on your butt. That's just the type of explosive wrestling that he has, not when he fought Johnny Hendricks, not when Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fought Johnny Hendricks. That's a different type of style wrestling.
But how quick Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is, that's the one thing, though. Yes. Because if Woodley goes in, Wonderboy has ridiculous reflexes, and he just has those natural reflexes where he's able to find different angles, and I think that's the thing that's going to be the key here. I think it's going to be a decision. I think Wonderboy's going to win, and I think that the big thing here is also the fact that you brought up that he can switch stances, and kind of like Tony Ferguson in the RDA fight, he does it very free-flowingly. It's natural movement, and he's not doing anything.
It's second nature to him.
Exactly. It's second nature to him, and where Tyron Woodley is doing it to set something up where Stephen Wonderboy Thompson can just do it free-willingly and just naturally. So I think Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is going to be your welterweight champion here. And again, Tyron Woodley doesn't get enough respect, and if he knocks out Wonderboy Thompson,
I would not be surprised, and I would not be upset.
I wouldn't be surprised, but do you know what? If he knocks him out, then he most likely is going to be fighting Damian Maia, and I'll still pick Damian Maia. So Woodley is going up against an uphill battle, but it's fun to watch.
Woodley right now is the king of a murderer's row of a division in the welterweight division. And he's beaten most of the top guys. He's knocked out Robbie Lawler. He's stopped Carlos Condit. So he's got a lot under his belt.
He did lose to Rory though.
Yes,
so
he
we'll
did.
See. But if he knocks out, or if he beats Wonderboy Thompson, if he knocks him out, that's something different. But if he beats Thompson, then he's just got another one under his belt as well. But let's move on to the main event. I don't know if you heard of this guy, Conor McGregor. He's fighting.
Oh yes, of course. The notorious Conor McGregor,
who's showing up in a mink fur coat to the press conference, about to throw chairs at Eddie Alvarez.
Dedication to Joe Frazier, ladies and gentlemen, when he fought at MSG.
He knows how to fight. I mean, he knows how to promote, and he definitely knows how to fight as well. He's trying to become the first ever UFC champion to hold two belts
in two weight classes
at the same time. He's trying to become the featherweight champion and the lightweight champion. And there's been talk that he'll be dropping one of the belts after the fight.
He doesn't want to. He does not want to.
It's not going to happen. He's Conor McGregor. He can do whatever he wants. He's gonna win this fight. Or if he does win this fight, I'm sorry. If he does win this fight, there's talks that he's either going to face Nate Diaz so for the third fight between them, and that's mostly going to be for the lightweight title.
What about the rematch with Aldo?
Not going to happen. The three names that I saw were Nate, obviously, for the third fight, Nick, which means he's going to go back up to 170 to fight Nick Diaz, or he's going to go back up to 170 to fight GSP. So we'll see. Those were the three names that were thrown out there, but let's talk about this title fight. We got lightweight title on the line. Eddie Alvarez, the champion, defending against Conor McGregor. For Conor, what's the way he can beat Eddie Alvarez?
Eddie Alvarez is going to be in his face trying to utilize that wrestling and that boxing, and when he does that, he's very low in his stance. That being said, Conor McGregor is going to have to utilize the center of the octagon, and if he does get put up against the cage, he's got to try and pummel and, again, utilize that footwork and get back to the center of the octagon. When Eddie Alvarez does want to shoot on him or duck his head for an overhand right or for a takedown or for anything, you're going to see Conor McGregor utilize jab, uppercut, hooks, and knees. That's about it. When he's shooting for the takedown. Now, when Conor McGregor has space, he can do it all. He can kick, he can punch, he's got knockout power in that left hand, but we're going to see if he can carry that power up here to 155 because at featherweight, he was just dropping people. He flatlined Jose Aldo in 13 seconds of the first round.
He was able to drop Nate a couple times in their fights.
But he didn't flatline him.
No, he didn't.
He didn't knock him out. He dropped him. And that was at 170. That was at a comfortable weight. This is also a more comfortable weight for Conor McGregor.
Conor looks great at 155.
Yes,
Have you
he
seen
does.
him? I mean, he doesn't look as gaunt as he did at 145, where he was basically a skeleton there. He doesn't look too big at 170, where he didn't look muscular at 170. He just looked fat.
Normal.
Yeah, he looked normal. I don't want to say fat. He's definitely not fat.
Absolutely not. He looked normal.
No, but he just looked normal, where at 155, he looks like a lean machine out there. And the one thing that
he doesn't look too gaunt.
No, he doesn't
He
at all.
looks good.
He looks fantastic at 155. And Alvarez does too. But we've seen Alvarez at 155. And the one thing that was really telling was in the first fight that Eddie had in the UFC after coming over from Bellator was against Donald Cerrone. And the way Cerrone won that was a lot of pressure. And the one thing with McGregor
he just chopped him down with leg kicks.
Yeah, and the one thing that with McGregor is we've seen him throw leg kicks against that Nate in that Nate fight, but outside of that, he does not use kicks.
He does not. He doesn't like to utilize leg kick. He doesn't like to utilize the low kick.
The one thing though is I think Conor will be able to space it because he's got the reach advantage. He's got a fairly decent reach advantage. There's 5-inch reach advantage here, so I think that Conor will definitely be able to keep Eddie at distance from taking him down. But that's the one thing that we haven't really seen is Conor be taken down. And we saw it one time with in the Nate fight, and
Chad Mendes.
Nate was able to. I don't think did Chad take him down?
Yes. Chad took him down twice.
And took him down twice. So obviously that's.
And he kept him down there. He beat him up. He actually. Chad Mendes actually cut Conor McGregor over, I believe, his left eye with an elbow in the ground and pound.
I always forget about that fight because
you remember the finish.
I just remember the finish, and that's one of my favorite finishes where he just backs him up and Chad Mendes is going.
Jab, cross, drops him right up against the cage.
So, I mean, Eddie, if he takes him down, he's definitely going to win it. But I think that Conor's just going to be able to space it, and I think that's the way that Conor's going to win with heavy pressure and spacing, and then he'll be able to open it up because he'll catch him with a hook or he'll catch him with an uppercut, and then Eddie will be starting to go back, and that's where Conor will just attack.
This is a very difficult fight for me to pick a fighter in this one.
It's going to be a great fight.
Because of the fact that Eddie Alvarez has been a champion in every division that he's competed in, and that includes the UFC Lightweight Championship that he's defending. He can do it all. He's got great wrestling. He's got good submissions. He's got a very nasty rear naked choke. He's got very heavy hands. He's got very good boxing skills. He does get hit a lot, actually, and so does Conor McGregor. Both of these guys, their striking defense isn't always there. It's not the best, but where they truly shine is how accurate they are with their strikes. Eddie Alvarez won the lightweight title by tagging RDA and rocking him and knocking him down and knocking him out and utilizing
it took him
that
a minute to finish it, but yeah.
Dog-like monstrous pressure that Eddie Alvarez has. He's got a very good chin, too. Donald Cowboy Cerrone was not able to finish Eddie Alvarez because of how tough he is. This is a 5-round fight. This is one of 3. This is the one of 3 5-round fights. This is a very hard fight for me to pick. I'm going to pick Eddie Alvarez.
Really?
Yes, I am. I'm going to pick Eddie Alvarez. I think his heavy hands and his wrestling are going to get it done. I think he's going to take Conor into the later rounds, and we've seen Conor fade in the later rounds when he fought Nate Diaz.
We have.
So we're going to see. I'm picking Eddie Alvarez. I'm picking Eddie Alvarez. I feel like Eddie Alvarez is going to be too big and too strong for him, and I feel like even if Conor lands that left hand, Alvarez is gonna take it and use his forward pressure and just take him down and beat him up.
Last time Eddie Alvarez was knocked out was April 14th, 2007 against Nick Thompson in his 11th fight in his career. The last time he lost to was obviously Donald Cerrone back in 2014 in his UFC debut. But the one thing you brought up was Conor's stamina and that we've seen him fade. But we saw him fade at 170.
Yes.
And I want to see if he fades at all at 155. So I don't think I think he'll be able to have more stamina here because he didn't have he dealt with a weight cut here.
When you cut weight, you do add cardio to your body. You give your body more stamina when you cut weight, especially when you do it correctly. And him at 155, like we said, it's not at 145 where he looks gaunt and he looks like Skeletor.
He looks fantastic at 155. So that's the one thing that's giving me pressure. And the one thing that we've seen in Conor's career is whenever he makes a new appearance at a weight class, he loses. The first time at 170, he lost to Nate Diaz. The first time at 145, way back early in his career, he lost to, I believe, Joe Duffy, former UFC fighter. And I think the first time he ever fought the first time he fought at lightweight, he lost to Joseph Duffy. And the first time he fought at featherweight, he lost to Artem Stoichkov back in 2008. So we've seen him make debuts and lose. But he isn't making his first ever fight. This isn't his first ever fight at lightweight. So I think that Conor knows his body, even though it's been a while since he's fought at lightweight. The last time he fought at lightweight was back in 2011.
But his last 2 fights weren't at 145.
It's a difficult one.
It is.
It's a difficult one, and I think I'm going to pick Conor just because I have the natural affinity to go to Conor because I like Conor.
Everybody likes Conor. I like Conor.
It's hard not to like him. You can hate him you can think he's obnoxious, but you can't dislike Conor. He's so entertaining, and I think that for the sport, it's better if he wins, just because it's gonna push UFC over the edge.
Yes, it is.
And that's the one thing is that if he loses, I don't think the UFC takes a step back, but then there's less ways to go with Conor's career because he'll have to defend the 145 belt if he loses. I'm pretty sure. So I think if you give him 2 belts and you give him that firepower, he's going to be unstoppable. And I think that Conor is so motivated in this fight. I think that his reach advantage and I think that his ability to catch Eddie with an uppercut where Eddie comes down for a takedown and he goes right up the middle with an uppercut, it's going to be a 2nd round finish. I believe in Mystic Mac. I think he called the 2nd round knockout.
First round knockout he called, but...
first round. So I don't believe him fully, but I think he's going to knock him out. I think it's going to be a 2nd round knockout. I think Eddie's going to go shoot for a takedown and Conor's going to catch him right up in the middle with an uppercut. But we are disagreeing on the McGregor fight. We are agreeing on the Woodley fight. We are agreeing on the Jedrzejczyk fight. We are disagreeing on the Weidman fight. You're picking Yoel Romero. I'm picking Chris Weidman. We're both picking Miesha Tate. We're both picking Frankie Edgar. We are both picking Habib Nurmagomedov. We're both picking Rafael Natal. We're both picking Bilal Muhammad. We are not picking the same fighter for Jim Miller and Thiago Alves. You're picking Jim Miller. I'm taking Thiago Alves.
You are? I thought you were taking Jim Miller. It sounded like you were taking Jim Miller.
I'm picking Thiago Alves.
Okay.
I think the guy who missed weight is gonna win. And then we were both picking Caitlin Chookagian. So we do have a little bit of a difference here, but we do kind of see it playing out the same way. But the thing we know is that this is the biggest fight card in
the
UFC
most explosive
history.
Fight card in UFC history, I would argue.
And the biggest. It's the first time in Madison Square Garden. They need to make a huge statement.
First time in New York in a very long time.
How do you make a statement? You use Conor McGregor, and Conor McGregor gets the win. I think
not
that's what's
only
going to
do
happen.
you use Conor McGregor, you use Conor McGregor in one of 3 title fights. That's over 75 minutes of fighting.
It should be fun.
It's going to be amazing. That's 15 rounds of nonstop blood and action, and it's going to be amazing. I love the fact that the UFC put this on Madison Square Garden. I'm kind of bummed that two of the bouts fell out because I really wanted to see those fights, and Tim Kennedy versus Rashad Evans, that would have been great.
Happened in 2 at 6.
To watch Calvin Gastelum fight ever improving and a new and improved Donald Cerrone at 170 would have been amazing as well, but that's okay because none of these title fights got scrapped. Thank you, the MMA injury bug gods. Thank you for not cursing this card with injuries or plaguing it with injuries. Just thank you so much.
Knock on wood, Danny.
I love this card.
Danny,
I can't wait for this tomorrow.
Danny, it's Friday.
It is Friday.
Knock on wood just to make sure.
There's 24 more hours left until tomorrow.
Hey, we know the weird situation with Henan Barrow slipping in the bathtub, so hopefully we don't get something like that where someone gets injured. But we are hopeful. We are excited. And for Danny Gutierrez, I'm Sean Anderson. This is the first time you're listening to one of our previews. We do these all the time. So definitely come back and listening to the MMA Minutes. We love doing it. We love having Danny on. We love talking about MMAs.
Here. I love talking about mixed martial arts.
We love talking about MMAs. What's wrong with
me?
It's been going on.
A long week,
It's been going on for 45 minutes. But we're super excited. We need the break. We need MMA to take our minds off of things. But if this is the first time listening, thank you so much for listening. And we will hopefully see you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this MVP podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Most Valuable Pod for more great podcasts.